Well, so,
I just said to Carol, every time I turn the corner, I expect to see one of my colleagues.
I just need one that makes sense.
Well, it's great that you all can come to this session. I just attended one that blew me out of the water. Incredible session.
Okay.
So this session is on diverse perspectives on fostering the beloved community. We have some amazing presenters here. Come a little more in the center here. So we have till 12:15. We have an hour and 15 minutes. We have three presenters, and what we'll do is each presenter will have about 18 minutes. 18 minutes. I'm going to be like Dr. Boxall. I always like to be like Dr. Boxall because she's so cool.
She's so
She
cool.
can be, she can be definite about things, but with such a beloved spirit. Nobody gets offended. But I'm going to be pretty. After 15 minutes, I'm going to say, raise my hand. That means you have 3 minutes left. So it'll be 18 minutes for each person. Then we will have a good half hour, maybe even a little more, for discussion for all three of the presenters. So we save your questions and comments for all of the presenters after they're all done. And I'm just going to go in the order of how the presenters are listed here. I'm Stuart Burns. Our presenters are Reverend Derek McCullers.
Yeah.
And Reverend Chad White.
Chad.
And Dr. Debbie Fletcher.
Good to see all of
My dear colleague here at the Union. And I will introduce each one before they speak. So I'll start with Reverend Derek. Now, this is an amazing guy. For those of you who came to the Vespers service that we led last night, I was just really moved. He's a man of spirit for sure, but also a real serious scholar. He is in HMS, Humanities, cohort 24. He lives in Concord, North Carolina. He's in the MLK specialization, which is fantastic. And I think I will just give you the title. It is You Want a New Relationship, Toni Morrison's Literary Genius and How Her Writings Could Instigate Social Justice in America. Reverend McCullers.
Thank you everybody for coming out. That's about perfect in terms of there. 3 of my slides are short videos, so that's about 14 of content based. So I'll be on about 30 seconds on those, but I'm gonna maybe get this posted to the King site so you can maybe delve into the slides a little more. But I think that the videos are more centerpiece. And just in a 30-second or minute summary, because I'm now heading into proposing my dissertation and doing and Toni Morrison, courses are being written about her, and there are emerging even books about how she works with the Bible and text, but she's refiguring it in a way and giving us a message that Christianity as it has been practiced is insufficient, and we need to think about it in another way. Hence, that's why I got the name. You make me want to have a new relationship. She challenged us to think in a new way. So let me start with her talking in her own words. She died last year, and this is a New York Times little brief thing they did about her. I get the Doc, did you enable that? That's a
I think you just have to click on it.
nope. Did you not enable contents of the video replay?
Is there a bar down on the bottom if you took it down?
Mary, can you help me out? Because is it, because see, that's supposed to be, that's just a picture of the video. At home, I just click on it, it plays.
Yeah.
That's the next.
Oh, if you minimize, maybe.
Okay, so on further down, let's hope the next one, oh, let's see, she might be able to. Let's see. Okay, that's about a minute of my, okay, so,
Let's do it again. Do you have your,
Chris,
yeah.
we're gonna edit this out in the film edition.
we are Justin.
Yeah. No, that's a joke. There is no film edition. So let's just pull it up again. Like, exit that one out.
Oh, here you are at the bottom.
Exit out of this?
Yeah, like minimize it and then we'll just close it. Like escape.
Escape.
Yeah. And then like exit X out of it. And then, yeah, you got it.
Presentation. Folks. And then conference day, yeah. Did you enable
Yeah,
content?
yeah, let's try to get them. Enable, like click on the little yellow box. Now should work. We
Does that go
hope.
to slideshow?
Yeah.
Do you want to go ahead and click on it?
I don't think it's there,
So we'll just leave that in there. That might be why.
because the little thing, but
Okay, we'll try it again.
Take two.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. I can't, can you see that? I can't. Okay.
I thought it would be better for me, at least in the late 60s and early 70s, to establish once and for all that all three of those things play. I'm black, I'm a woman, and I'm a writer, and they go together.
That the people who do this thing, who practice this are correct. There is something distorted about sex. It's a huge waste and corruption and distortion. It's like it's a profound look that nobody examines over here. It feels it. It is. If you can only be tall because somebody's on it, you have a serious problem. My people, white people, have a very, very serious problem. I'm not going to give up one drop of melanin in order to get there. I'm not going to erase my race or my gender to get there. I want all of it. I deserve all of it, and we all do it. I don't want to be blanded, bleached out in order to participate in this country and walk any hall of power or corridor that I want to.
Interesting to see when a kid walks in a room, your child or anybody else's child, does your face light up? Or, and that's what they're looking for. When my children used to walk in the room when they were little, I looked at them to see if they had buckled their trousers, or if their hair was combed, or if their socks were up. And so you think your affection and your deep love is on display because you're carrying it. It's not.
Okay. So we then go on to the next item.
I thought it would be better for me, at least in the late 60s and early.
How do we advance? I guess.
The arrow.
Yeah. We got in, but how do we get out? Okay, that's the next slide.
That is one, okay, I'll be right here.
All right, so one of the things, I just finished 8th where you begin to move toward a destination. One of the things you have to find is your scope. So the scope of the issue has a couple of components. And the question is, in a way that I'm going to be pursuing, could conjoining literature and religion in adult and higher education work at least as part of the solution to racism and issues as such? Could that be the vehicle of literature in general and the African American novel in particular? So the question takes me to a more specific question of how select literature from Toni Morrison's corpus of work might be utilized to A, provide secondary and post-secondary learners with a better understanding of both the challenges and possibilities of American spirituality to create new and better social realities for oppressed individuals, and B, how would their own sense of self-efficacy be affected by this type of endeavor? All right, so when you do that, there's going to be some analysis and measurement. Now, my project's not approved, let me say, but I'm kind of postulating where I want to head. And that is, in answering the scope question, might be envisioned as unfolding a few phases here. First, the prolegomena of situating my inquiry within those disciplinary aspects, the sociological and historical aspect that foregrounds the whole emergence of the African American novel as a phenomenon that responds to the racism crisis in America. Next slide. And then I need to orient that perspective. So the second move, I'm going to hopefully, if everything gets approved, argue that these literature pieces can be reviewed from a unique Africana methodological perspective. And to that end, in one of my papers, not for this class, but I did propose a provocative critical hermeneutical model. I call it the star of cosmic apperception. The word apperception is how we process and understand and put together things that we experience. Next slide. All right, you can see here, and this was handwritten, like Paul said in one text. We believe Paul was visually impaired, and so am I, the corneal transplant. It says, see, I'm writing in my own hand, but in my co-work space where I do a lot of my studies and stuff, I rent a space, and it has, you can write on the wall. And as I was reading some stuff, some Nancy Fraser, and also some of the semiotic theory, it made me think about how we process stuff cosmologically, which you see the line present, future, experience, trends, content understanding, what is stated and what is applied. Now, so the description here, the star of cosmic apperception, that's my term, I thought about this, is my own approach that takes aspects of semiotic theory, melds it with an African-centered perspective of connectedness of all things in time and space as a way of receiving our literature and even other cultural productions. Next. All right, so to describe it a little more, the lines of connectivity and insight when understanding African American literature and religion in this kind of unique cosmological African-centered perspective I'm proposing. Present and future connect with experience and trends. Meaning, one, the characters are going through something in the now as you read the literature that is often a reverberation of a systematic how. What you read in the Morrison book, the troubles and things in the now, but it's a reverberation of a systematic how. How does this come together and how it's happening? And two, the possibility of resolution, which our characters don't often reach, but it can oftentimes be indicative of a social justice solution to a problem. If they would, many of our characters still end conflicted, but if they would see kind of what she's trying to bring to in the writing, it would be indicative of a social justice solution. Okay, next slide. And the part two of these lines of connectivity insight in that little star, I may Content and understanding connects with stated and implied. Content is the syntax of words used in literature constituting what is stated as the flesh of the story. And that's what most traditional criticism focuses. There's this whole argument, and Dr. Roper is of course on epistemological, but it gets stuck there sometimes. I use the term flesh because I see things spiritually. However, two, if you get down here, understanding though is what the author wants to say through the characters whose development have important implications for both their and our social situation. But this cannot be seen conventionally. You cannot fully understand Toni Morrison if you're going to look at it with a conventional eye. You cannot. It requires a spiritual connection with the author and what is happening in the story. Some of what we did earlier, and all of us had a foundation class about Foucault had a work called What is the Author? And there was some debate and talk about, is the author just putting down some content, or is that writing an extension of who they are? And you need to consider that. Okay, next. Cynthia Wallace, who's in my bibliography that I built in 850, also helps us get our understanding of Morrison's writing. Wallace contends that Morrison's overall project recognizes language as power. Okay, thank you. Recognizes language as power, black power to be exact. As she states, Morrison conceives of language partly as a system, partly as a living thing over which one has control, mostly as agency, and act with consequence. Therefore, realizing or believing in the agency of language, I contend, Morrison, through her literature, is engaged in constructive theology to create space through fictive worlds and interactions where the wrongness of racism and the beauty of self-love is pointed out. Next slide. So, Beloved, we're going to use as the prime example of key apperception. Remember that I developed that word apperception, where things connect and we make meaning. Okay. All right, so Morrison's womanist view of Christ, a.k.a. Carolyn Mitchell's work that I'm bringing out here. And I say Morrison's womanism in her character bear Christ in the body. She has more of an embodied spirituality. In her article on biblical revision in the work of Toni Morrison, Carolyn Mitchell deals with what she sees as three similar occurrences in the Toni Morrison novel Beloved, which where much of my work is going to center, that have import for how Morrison is working with and, in a sense, refiguring the significance of Christianity in the African American experience. These are the instances where one, in the story now, the tree is discovered on Seth's back. And two, Seth's brief relationship with Denver, that's the white woman in the story. And three, the calling of baby Suggs to preach, which I think is her mother, I believe. But we're going to see right now when the lady discovers Seth's back, and then the calling her mother to preach. Hopefully.
What am I supposed to do there? Yes or no?
No.
Sorry.
So, and I said in how I captioned this, tangentiality could and should connect us via God's preferential option for the poor and oppressed. I believe she puts that out there. The woman, the tree on her back, the tree of life, but that life line, the bloodline, the sacrifice is the suffering in slavery. She was whipped so much that it made a tree on her back. All right, next slide.
3 minutes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and apologies for the sound, let her know it won't go louder.
All right, for this to show, there's only a couple minutes left, but let's go to the next one because I got just a couple more slides. Because I'm really, hopefully I can get about 2 minutes for technological problem. You can go ahead and go to the next one because I got. See, it was already ready to wrap. That was the last slide. Okay, next slide. And you saw I updated the caption. I had liberatory practice involved body and spirit. That's why I had that there. She said, let them see you and dance and so forth. So, including point 1. In the final analysis, what we can do is continue to grace one another amid these systemic oppressions. This is what these characters in Beloved do. It is Seth who gives Beloved freedom. Amy, who gives Seth charity. And Baby Suggs, who gives the gathered community of African Americans spiritual direction. Next slide. Concluding point number 2. Carolyn Mitchell's insightful piece ends one of my main theories on this subject, as provocative as it begins, going back to the scripture that states, now these 3 abide, faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love, and boldly declaring that ultimately Morrison locates love within the human field of action and expression that, however flawed, continues to hope. Next slide. This is what black theology through oratory in the black church setting does, that Morrison, I contend, also does through written means in the literary section. It takes misapplied notions of ultimacy that supports a racist power structure and rehabilitates them, bestowing the power to call ourselves beloved of God. See, the title beloved. Might that be the substance of a more efficacious application of the Christian faith? The end.
That was terrific. Okay. Our next presenter is my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Debbie Flickinger, who is a member of our faculty in the PhD program. And she teaches currently Engaging Difference in our PhD program. Her teaching and research interests include the intersectionality of education, social justice, and sustainability through the lens of the caring science theory, which sounds very exciting to me.
Dr. Burns, thank you very much.
I'm so happy to see everyone. I'm honored, and we just had a wonderful presentation prior to this one. So when I give workshops and when I do presentations, I always like to do a grounding. So I want to do that now. And what you can do is get comfortable, close your eyes if you want to, and we'll just, I mean, a lot has happened on our journey at the residency, particularly the hotel and us getting up early this morning to come here, so we're gonna have a little grounding. And what we're gonna do is it's all about peace, balance, and harmony. Well, okay, let me start again. The title of this presentation is the Watson Effect. It's the emergence of miracles in a living system. How many people here in this room believe in miracles? Don't be afraid, just raise your hand. Okay. But as we're going to continue, we're going to do the grounding. So breathe in peace. Exhale chaos. Breathe in balance. Exhale disparity. Breathe in harmony. Exhale turmoil. Breathe in peace, balance, and harmony. Exhale into the willingness to be present. And when you're ready, for those that have closed their eyes, you can open them. Are we all ready? Yes. Okay, thank you. In our time together, we're going to explore a narrative about a connection that focuses on personal experience. Yeah. So the agenda, we're going to have the introduction. So Dr. Burns did that. We did the intention, which is the grounding. We did the centering grounding. The next is going to be, I'm going to talk about Gene Watson and what I call the Watson Effect. We're going to talk about Caritas Principle number 10, which is my favorite, embracing miracles in a deeply complex world. And then, of course, we'll have a closing. So basically, this presentation is about a connection that focuses on a personal experience with Caritas Principle number 10. So I'm thinking about who am I, what drew me to this presentation, and my hope for you is to be able to embrace miracles as they emerge in a living system. So I had an aha moment. We did that, so you can keep going. Yeah. So the woman that I'm going to be speaking about is Gene Watson, and this is her caring, the caring science theory. There are 10 principles that go into that theory. And she has a quote that this is really great for us today. Maybe this moment with this one person is the very reason that we're here on Earth at this time. Next. So, Caritas Principle number 10 is open to mystery and allow miracles to enter. So the story that I want to share with you about this is Dr. Gene Watson was on my committee as an outside member. And my daughter is a registered nurse. And when I was going through grad school, taking my master's, getting my master's, my daughter said, I'd like you to meet Gene Watson. Your work is in line with hers. And I said, you know, when you have kids, you think, okay, I'm gonna listen to her. So I went through a course, it's called the Caritas Coach, which is basically, it's all about caring, you know, caring for others. Next slide. So when you look at it, we're embracing miracles in a deeply complex world. The web of life is, of course, an ancient idea that has been used by poets, philosophers, and mystics throughout the ages to convey their sense of interwoven and interconnectedness of all phenomena. And that's with Capra. And you know what? Miracles can and will emerge in education, issues of sustainability, and allow for the expansion of consciousness. So after I got my dissertation, I've been in touch with Dr. Jane Watson. So she sent me an email and she said, I'd like you to give me a personal connection with Caritas principle number 10. I said, okay, but I really did not know what that was going to look like. So I did what I always do. I look at a blank computer with, nothing's there, and I go, okay, she wants me to write about this. So I did this for about a week. Every day I would just sit at that computer. I guess I thought words were gonna come out of there. Well, one day they did. And I went all the way back into my younger days when I was 15. And I lost my mother through breast cancer. And I started, you know, writing, handwriting, how that all happened, what was going on. And I had that aha moment. It was this principle that carried me to right here today, where I am. And it was because subconsciously I believed in a miracle. Something had to give, right? I was all alone. There was nobody there to do what my mother could do. And we all know what moms do. They are our rock. They love us unconditionally. I didn't have that anymore. This miracle. So I'm in this book, page 103, and I tell that story. It's a whole chapter. So, you know, as we go on, you can go to the next one. So, I love this quote. The consciousness that learns is in, this is interesting to read this. The consciousness that learns, it is at the origin point of the universe, is itself an origin point of the universe. I'm going to say that again. The consciousness that learns, it is at the origin point of the universe, is itself an origin point of the universe. The awareness that bubbles up each moment that we identify as ourselves is rooted in the originating activity of the universe. We are, all of us, arising together at the center of the cosmos, and that's by Brian Swinney. There's so much I want to say, but time is of the essence, so I hope, oh, you said questions are going to be at the very end?
Yes.
Okay. I do? How much time?
Well, you actually have at least 8 minutes.
At least 8 minutes. Okay. That's great. I love to talk. Okay, so.
Dr. Flickinger, if you would like to include in your time
Questions?
some interaction.
Would that be okay,
that'd be fine.
Dr. Burns?
We'll have a little bit of time that we have. You have 7 or 8 minutes.
Okay, so it's open. Ask away. Please.
Well, I just wanted to comment and say how nicely that dovetails with Marston's work. I don't know if Marston ever had any interaction with her or not, but the principles expressed there would be kind of congruent, especially that last sentiment about the originating and we all centralized together. So, good job, Dr. Burns, preparing it, because that really does, those kind of concepts go hand in hand. And even, you notice I had to start cosmic after that, and you were talking cosmic stuff. So that's really good.
Thank you for saying that, because that's why I call it the Watson effect, because it's taking all the literature and seeing how they're connected, you know. It might be old, but, you know, it's how we develop our coined phrase, you know. When I was doing my research, it was about sustainability, and I coined caring sustainability. I have a trademark, paid money for it, but, you know, this is how we develop from, you know, these type of cosmic, you know, effects. This is great. I want to hear as many questions as possible. Yes?
I wonder if, when you asked how many of us believe in miracles, I didn't raise my hand because I did experience something that I had always thought was a miracle. I guess my question is, how do we know what we can call a miracle? And I had a situation where my mother died, and she was an alcoholic, and she committed suicide, and she died. She was declared dead by the doctor, and I was there. And after she had been dead for 4 minutes, I looked at her, I gazed at her with closed eyes, and she started breathing again. She had been dead for about 5 minutes. And I was told, you know, that she was dead. And I've always thought that was a miracle. But now I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure what that was. I'm not sure if that was something in me, that some power in me that, you know, communicated to her when she was in effect dead, and helped to bring her back to life. I know that she would have died if I hadn't done whatever I did. So I guess if we're going to talk about miracles, I think it's important to be sort of clear about, you know, what we constitute as a miracle, because I'm not sure if a miracle is something that comes from within. Maybe that's not the same. Maybe a miracle is more something that comes from the cosmos, and comes from, you know, of course, the interior and exterior, not separate. But so that's my question, if it has any relevance. How do we know when we experience a miracle?
So I'm going to open it up to others, because it's what we believe. You know, it's faith, it's spiritual, it's, you know, believing in the higher, something that's bigger than us. And to me, it's not a right or wrong answer. It's really, if you believe that was a miracle, it was a miracle. You know, like there's so many, for me, you know, when I said my mom died when I was 15 years old, it was a miracle that I'm standing here now, because I have to tell you, the memoir that I'm working on is called The Pimp Saved My Life. And I will tell you about that in another time. So miracles happen even when we don't know that they're happening. You know what I mean? You know, it's just a awesome, you know, an occurrence, a miracle. You know, it sounds huge. It sounds really just unbelievably powerful. You know, energy, a miracle. You know, it's like that water just coming. You know, in a smooth, not a storm. You know, but just that smoothness, a miracle.
I got one. I know this might sound kind of off, but my mom passed away in my hands January 7th of 2018, and we had talked that Friday, and she had congestive heart failure, and she just left. So, you know, you pray that you want to hear your loved one's voice again. You know, once you go through the period, you just want to hear her say something. You pray, this is something. Well, I got Dr. Overton as my facilitator, and I know this sounds strange, but the tone of her voice and the way she talks, I could hear my mother coming through her voice, and it really was touching me. And I didn't say nothing to Dr. Overton yet, but it was grabbing me, and I was like, I mean, her actions and the way she interacts and the way she's talking, I'm hearing my mother's tone of her voice. But I didn't say nothing yet because I didn't know. I didn't want to say, "Hey, Dr. Overton." I mean, but isn't that strange?
No, it's not strange at all. Because that is your personal connection. It's your story. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it doesn't sound strange at all.
Yeah, and so I want to share that.
I appreciate you sharing that. And I appreciate you, Dr. Burns, sharing your story. How much time do we have?
2 more minutes.
So,
Wow.
could I add something?
Sure.
So, just in keeping with the context of Martin Luther King, beloved community, Chad and Dr. Samaga and I had a conversation yesterday, and we were talking about, and this was also, it was referred to in Dr. Theo Harris's presentation the other night, how King didn't know that he was king. You know, he didn't know that he would be the Martin Luther King Jr. He was just doing what he was doing. And people in Montgomery, they didn't know that, you know, that this major event was going to happen prior to it happening. Rosa Parks didn't know what was going to come out of her refusal to get up from her seat on that particular day. All of these things sort of came together. The weather was perfect for them to be able to walk to work as opposed to taking the bus. I mean, there were all of these little incremental things that came together to create a perfect situation. So even that could be looked at as a miracle in terms of how the civil rights movement gained impetus as a result of those actions. So I just wanted to add that.
Sure. Thank you very much.
And King always called it a spiritual movement. He always said, this is a spiritual movement.
Anyone else? Final comments?
Sometimes it's a bit challenging for me. If I understand our conversation this morning, sharing this moment, right? We feel as if we say it, it sounds so strange. But the likelihood of this happening the way it happened, it's an unexplained phenomenon for some. But for those of us that go through this journey, it is a manifestation. The cosmic was designed by the Almighty. In my experience, when I came back to New York after relocating to Florida, we went through all of our savings. We were staying in a cousin's place after having had several interviews for work that didn't pan out, right? And I must have gone through 3 pair of shoes in 3 months, knocking on every door every day in New York City as a school administrator, knocking on every, and you know, when you leave your resume, you figure your will be done. And you go through every single one. And one day, I got up to their 30 districts. So I got to District 12. I said, I'm not going to Staten Island. And for those of you familiar with New York, the 5 boroughs, I wasn't getting on a ferry. I had to change careers altogether. long story short,
Yeah.
I got to 12. I speak with the superintendent there. She leaves a resume. She was such an arrogant person.
Uh-oh.
And there was no way that I could work for this person. But you know, my grandmother said necessity has no shame. So I said, well, here you go. And she asked a question. And for some reason, I went to Exodus. And there's a scripture that came to mind. We left on good standings, and at the time, it was a Thursday or Friday, I wound up getting an assistant principal job. And I'm there for about a week or so. My cousin, who's dating someone, he says, you know, you should speak to her. And I get on the phone, she says, are you sure you want to be a New York City principal? Are you out of your, I said, well, sure, yeah, why not? So she says, you know, I know of someone who's a superintendent who's looking for a principal, and you know what? I'm gonna give her your name. Of all the schools, of all the superintendents, she gives her my resume, and she says, oh, I know this guy. I'm hiring him. He's hired. On a Wednesday, I get the call that, are you available to come in? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I got lost in New Jersey in the turnpike, like going back and forth. I paid 3 tolls. I don't know how. I was in a circle because emotionally I was a mess. I get there. I get the interview. They sit me in this conference room, and then I had a choice of 3 schools to choose from. Now, if that's not,
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a wonderful, uplifting note
Yes.
for us to close.
Yes.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much.
So now we have our third presenter is Reverend Chad White, who is in cohort 24, lives in Dayton, has been a pastor for 16 years, and a lot of other things as well. He's also been a very important activist in Dayton and probably other places too, but I know in Dayton he's very involved in the hospital closure that Reverend Mary Worthen told us about the other night, and that whole struggle, that whole ongoing struggle. But he's a man of many parts, many strengths, and someone that I've just really enjoyed getting to know and working with. So I'd like to present Reverend Chad White.
As a preacher, I'm comfortable behind the podium. So it's my comfort
Even if
zone.
there's no mic.
Right, exactly. Let me grab my water. I got a little frog in my throat going on as well. The title of my lecture, and I forgot my jump drive for my PowerPoint, so I'm just going to go old school. But the title of my talk is The Beloved Community, Living Together as Sisters and Brothers or Dying Apart as Fools. And we know that the phrase is living together as brothers, but we want to make sure that we're inclusive in our language. The actualization of the beloved community was Martin King Jr.'s thought and life mission. From adolescence to adulthood, King's sensitivity to the immorality of injustice led him to embrace the concept of a transformed and regenerated society that was reflective of the kingdom of God. Originally a Roycean supposition, the intellection of the beloved community became a consistent theme throughout King's speeches, sermons, and writings. The idea of the beloved community was so engrossing that it became a fundamental component of the Southern Christian Leadership's SCLC's mission. King wrote, the ultimate aim of SCLC is to foster and create the beloved community. In America, where brotherhood is a reality. From Montgomery to Memphis, King reiterates the ideologies of agape, the interconnectivity, if you will. In a letter from a Birmingham jail, King reminds America we are tied together in a single garment of destiny, caught up in an inescapable network of mutuality. King elevates the concept of the beloved community from a utopian theory to an issue of life and death when he proposes, we must learn to live together as brothers or die apart as fools. So the relevant question that we must ask is it possible to learn to live together as brothers and sisters, or are we willing to die apart as fools? On March 31st, 1968, at the National Cathedral, a week prior to his death and assassination and death, King gives an address entitled Remaining Awake Through a Great Revolution. He introduces his speech with Washington Irving's story of Rip Van Winkle. Rip goes into a mountain and to hunt, but instead he decides to hang out and get drunk. Falls asleep for 20 years and sleeps through one of the most significant events in American history, the American Revolution. King goes on in the speech to further elucidate the dangers of somnolence and argues the intense need to remain awake and apperceptive through the shifting social structures that are taking place not only parochially, but nationally and worldwide as well. He further articulates the importance of remaining awake because a revolution was taking place in America, a revolution of values that finds its locus in the interconnectivity of all humanity. King contends, all I'm saying is simply this, that all mankind is tied together, all life is interrelated, and we are all caught up in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny, and whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. For some strange reason, I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. John Donne caught this years ago and placed it in graphic terms. King argues, no man is an island entire of itself, every man is a piece. King goes on to propose we can live together again as brothers and sisters, or we perish as fools. So if King's preposition of structural interrelation in global human interconnectivity are correct or vertical, what are the barriers that have historically asphyxiated any attempts for humanity to live out the idea of the beloved community? King provides the answers to these as well. One of his most prophetic, in my opinion, and one of his most prophetic and revolutionary moments, in a speech delivered to the National Conference of New Politics in '67, King posits America suffers from three great evils: militarism, he labors on poverty, capitalism, excessive materialism as well in other speeches, and thirdly, racism. So that's militarism, capitalism, materialism, or racism. These three evils are a triple-pronged sickness. These three evils are triple-pronged sicknesses, or draconian monstrosities that have worked and still do work in concord in the national body politic to maintain oppressive systems and structures that seek to preserve a palpable and implacable imbalance of powers and resources. Militarism, the first evil. When King postulated this idea, America was in the throes of Vietnam War. King contends humanity must put an end to war before war puts an end to humanity. It's no longer a choice between violence and nonviolence, but its existence in non-existence, because war breeds more war and violence breeds more violence. King's critique of America's unsolicited involvement in Vietnam points out the immorality of the war on multiple fronts. For King, militarism was morally wrong because war destroyed human lives that had intrinsic value. But secondly, it was wrong because war was just too expensive. It reallocated resources that were to be used at that time for the war on poverty to fund the industrial military complex. In King's mind, the war on poverty that the government was supposed to be fighting was non-existent. Rather than a war, he comments, on poverty, the government didn't even make a good skirmish. Even today, as we are confronted with the very same dilemma that caused King to proclaim that my country, America, is the greatest purveyor of violence in the world, we continue to place insatiable military demands above the critical needs of America's underprivileged citizens. Militarism continues to occupy one of the largest line items in the federal budget at the expense of humane and meaningful programs that could serve to eradicate hunger, improve education, and make a dent, at least a decent dent, in poverty. The Department of Defense budget for year 2020, based on what I saw online at militarybenefits.info, was $738 billion, which is a $22 billion increase over calendar year 2019. Matter of fact, just on Sunday, as war is on the horizon, depends on how you define war between America and Iran, Donald Trump tweeted, "We have spent $2 trillion on military equipment, and if necessary, we will use it to hit Iran hard and fast." Yet the education budget for year 2020, $64 billion for K through 12, is a 10% decrease from 2019. Those numbers are based on www.ed.gov. The Department of Defense budget accounts for the second largest expenditure after Social Security in the U.S. government. Now, I'm no economist, but I really had a hard time defining and figuring out exactly how much was spent on defense because it's so scattered throughout the budget. And so if the budget says $738 billion based on what was online, but then Trump tweets $2 trillion, you know, we should be really not sure how much is being spent, okay? According to PovertyUSA.org, the poverty threshold in America is $25,700 for a family of 4. Yet in 2018, 38.1 million people, or almost 12% of people living in America, are living in poverty. According to King, violence or militarism is the inseparable twin of Western excess, which is materialism, capitalism, and economic exploitation. The second evil, excessive materialism, capitalism, economic exploitation. Excessive materialism is a barrier to the beloved community because it promotes a love of things and a usage of people. King often employed German Jewish existentialist philosopher and theologian Martin Buber's concept of the I and thou and I and it relationship to point this out. Excessive materialism or capitalism substitutes the I-thou relationship for an I-it relationship. Materialism is manifested when someone loves things and uses people. It focuses on the self-regarding dimension of life rather than the other-regarding dimension of life. This excessive materialism is a driving factor that creates and sustains poverty. Bailouts for Wall Street, subsidies for big businesses, tax breaks for billionaires and millionaires, and the reduction or eradication of social programs for the poor and needy are what materialism looks like. This is, and I coined this word, Nina, as you coined your phrase the other day, what reverse Robin Hood-ism looks like. Robbing the poor to give to the rich. Dr. Burns, according to King, this is socialism for the rich and capitalism for the poor. Materialism remains a hindrance to the manifestation of the beloved community. I'm going to point out 3 simple examples. Well, I'll do 2. 2 simple examples for the sake of time. Non-sufficient fund fees at banks and check cashing businesses in the hood. Okay? Materialism and capitalism literally is a tax that is attached to being poor. In August of 2017, CNN published a report regarding NSF fees. They contend in 2016, U.S. consumers paid a total of $15 billion in fees for bouncing checks or overdrafting, which is when a customer tries to make a purchase without enough money in their account to cover the transaction. According to new data released by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, all banks with assets over $1 billion must report how much it brought in via bounce checks and overdraft fees. They just started doing this in 2015, and since then, the numbers have risen almost 4% in the last 4 years. Now, it was sad to say, and of course we all probably know this, not surprisingly, the report also finds that the most financially vulnerable people bear most of the costs. just 1/5 of the banking customers pay over 90% of those NSF fees. And those customers make less than $35,000 a year. Payday loans is another example of capitalism that's a tax for the poor. According to the same organization, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the amount of capital of payday loans, the interest ranges from $10 to $30 for every $100 borrowed. You'll do better borrowing money from the mob if you can find them. Depending on your state law and maximum amount your state permits to borrow, a fee of only $15 per hundred is what is most common. This equates to an annual percentage rate of almost 400% for a 2-week loan. So for example, if you need to borrow $300 before your next payday, it would cost you $345 to pay it back, assuming your interest rate is at $15 per day. While payday loans provide quick cash, the national average annual percentage rate is almost 400%, as I said earlier. In contrast, the average credit card APR in July was 16.96%. This can add up fast. For example, if you take $500 payday loan out with APR of $391, you will owe about $575 in 2 weeks. But watch this. This is the way capitalism works. The poor have to stay poor in order for the rich to stay rich. The loan cycle rarely stops there. Many payday loan borrowers allow rollover and the loan multiple times, so that if you can't pay the complete loan off, you'll just pay an interest rate or a fee, and then the loan just rolls over and those interest rates roll over as well. So do that for just 3 months on a $500 loan, and now the amount due is over $1,000. According to Nick Bork, Director of Consumer Finance at Pew Charitable Trust, he says it's normal for people to get caught up in the payday loans because that's the only way the business model works. A lender isn't profitable until the customer has renewed or reborrowed the loan somewhere between 4 and 8 times. So King talks about militarism, he talks about materialism. And I'm kind of rushing through so I don't have time to really unpack all this, so I want to get to some steps to build a beloved community. But the last thing he talks about is racism as one of America's evils that prohibit the building of beloved community or the manifestation of beloved community. Racism, I've identified 4 types of racism that hinders the building of authentic community. Number 1 is ideological racism. That is, I'm better than you because of my skin color. There is nothing else that you've shown to be insufficient about you. Is simply because of the skin color I was born with. That's ideological racism. The second type of racism is institutional racism. This is seen in the policies and procedures in medical, media, justice, educational, banking, housing institutions. It's institutional racism that is interwoven into the policies and procedures of these organizations, that even if another racist person is never born, the system and the structure of that institution will remain racist because it's woven into the policies.
3 minutes.
Oh wow. Okay. So I'm gonna rush. So ideological, institutional, interpersonal. All right. Racist jokes, stereotypes. Then internalized. That's where people of color, minority, black people, we hate each other. Well, white people, the dominant culture has to do nothing because we do it to ourselves. All right. So then, what is the beloved community? The beloved community is based on King's second principle of nonviolence, Our Stride Towards Freedom, his first book. Nonviolence seeks to win friendship and understanding. The beloved community is the kingdom of God active here on earth. Let me throw this at you. You should check out the Cornelia Farm out of Americus, Georgia. It is an example of what beloved community looks like. And actually, the founder of Habitat for Humanity was trained there, as well as Doris Day, the Catholic social justice advocate. She spent time there as well. And the founder of the Cornelia Farm did actually do a revival for Dr. King when he was in Montgomery. But steps to building a beloved community. John Perkins is a great civil rights leader and one of the founders of the faith-based community building coalition. You should look him up. He's a pastor out of Jackson, Mississippi. Number one, he says if we're really going to build authentic community, we need to look at relocating. Move back into neighborhoods that are depressed, that are deprived, that are poor neighborhoods, that when you move into an impoverished neighborhood, it moves from those people, these people, to us and we people. Okay, that you really begin to understand what's going on in the lives of people in impoverished neighborhoods when you live there. If you move into an impoverished neighborhood and you try to build community, rest assured if you have kids, you want the best for your kids, so you'll want what's best for families with impoverished kids. Relocation. Then the second thing is redistribution. So relocation, then the second is redistribution. Redistribution brings the principles of justice back to the undeserved communities. Justice has left communities of color and lower economic status, leaving an unjust criminal court and prison system, unjust hiring practices, unjust housing development, and injustice in educational institutions. All right, so relocation, redistribution, and then reconciliation. The driving force behind, for King, in particular as a Christian minister, for building beloved community is agape love. That love is the driving factor. As a preacher, Christian, I wrestle with this idea of agape because agape, within the context of Christianity, is the manifestation of God's love acted out by Christ on Calvary. So the relevant question is, if a person is a non-believer or an atheist, can we still have agape love? So classical Greek definitions makes it clear that you still can have agape love outside of being a Christian. Now for King, that love was based on Christ, but we still can build beloved community even if you don't profess to be a Christian. You can possess this love that's altruistic, that's giving, that's selfless, and that desires to see others succeed in life. I'll throw these couple things at you. 1 minute left real fast on religion and race that was provided by the General Commission of the United Methodist Church. They provide 25 traits of the beloved community. Don't look like that. I'm not going to read all 25. I'm just going to throw a couple of them at you. Y'all looking at like church people. I'm closing now. Beloved community offers radical hospitality to everyone and inclusive family rather than exclusive club. Number 2, beloved community recognizes and honors the image of the Creator in every human being, whoever that Creator is. And I wrestled with that for some years, but I'm better now. Number 3, beloved community exhibits personal authenticity, true respect and validation of others. Beloved community recognizes and affirms differences, does not attempt to eradicate differences. Number 5, beloved community resolves conflicts peacefully without violence, recognizing that peacefully doesn't always mean comfortably, but peacefully. It promotes human rights and works to create a non-racist society, shares power, and acknowledges the inescapable network of mutuality amongst the human family, righteously opposes and takes direct action against poverty, hunger, and homelessness, and finally, focus energy on removing evil forces and not destroying persons. We have a great mandate before us that looks like a daunting task, but I'm convinced we can make the world a better place by building beloved community.
So much, Chad. Yes, sir. So we have some time left. We have about 20 minutes left for discussion and questions. So what I'd like you to do is ask questions. You could ask a question to any of the 3 specific presenters, or you could ask questions to 2 of them or all 3 of them. If you want, please specify if it's to a particular presenter. And if you could just raise your hand, that would just be easier. And we'll start with Reverend Brody.
Reverend Dare, I'm a huge Toni Morrison fan. I'm curious though, because I've read some Toni Morrison that I can really relate to, and some other stuff. I'm like, she was high when she did this, because I just can't. I can't understand what you're saying. When what you're looking at, and the other Cynthia, I think that you quoted, that was looking into what she was creating. is this based on what Tony says about her own work? Or is this based on what other people are seeing in her work? Like when we go look at art and say, I see this happening. Well, how are you getting through that analysis of Tony?
Yeah, it is based on what people are seeing in her work. But the thing about Morrison, and there's a literary technique, I forgot what it's called, Al likes to tell you, but there's a way that authors can kind of purpose it and write it so that you have to take the look at the angle and say, that could mean this. And a whole field of scholarship has emerged around her. This is one book this is Shirley A. Stay. Cynthia Wallace is one I quoted, and Shirley A. Stay. And this is not in the, I don't think the Union Library is that they couldn't get it, but I actually bought it. Maybe about a third of work. But Toni Morrison and the Bible. This is a great title. Contested intertextualities. Toni Morrison contests, one might even say wrestles with in some ways, Christianity, especially as a vehicle that's been handed down to African American, even Baby Suggs, the character in the priest. Towards the end of that, well, the movie depicts, in the book as well, probably more better detail in the book, but when the ghost is turning up the house and stuff, the little granddaughter goes and gets near her in the bed and says something like, "Protect me, Grandma." She's getting old. She's actively dying at that point. But she's just like, kind of like moaning. But it sticks out in the sense that traditional mode of Christianity could not dispel that ghost away. For instance, but in the end it was the women coming together, and they brought all kinds of little entrapments and noise makers and things, and coming, clanging and making noise that I guess scared the ghost away. But what I got out of that was, and I wrote some of that in some of my paper writing over the last couple of times, is that it was that coming together in community. But I dovetail her with James Cone. This is kind of a new area. I'm putting her in dialogue with James Cone and Black. She probably denied that she's a Black theologian, but her work has theological implications. So I'm putting her in dialogue with this whole notion of another way of looking at Christ. A professor that I'm in tune with at Chicago Theological Center, Joanne Terrell, teaches the class. She actually uses the term Christa to kind of re-envision Christ in a feminine sense. And I talked about that some about, the women embodying Christ and that tree on her back as, embodiment. So I'm bringing that in dialogue with some of the scholars that's beginning to emerge and talk about that. It's a new kind of new field, to answer your question. Yeah.
Yes.
This question to Pastor Chad. You talked about the 3 R's, so to speak, relocating, redistribution, and reconciliation. Especially within the African American community, how close do you think we are at achieving some of these things? And the reason I say is when I think of relocating, I know there are some of us that once we leave there, we don't want to go back. And we don't want to go back, not because we don't want to help, but when you go back in, you find that those you're with, those that are around. So if I want my kids, per se, that if I want them to go to a new school, and a better school, I would want that for the community, but you find that your next door neighbors don't really care about that. So how close do you realistically think that we are moving towards that?
I think we're closer than we realize. Talking with Les the other day about the resurgence even of kids going to Black HBCUs. I think that we experienced the success of being able to move to the suburbs and attend PWIs, but now there's a resurgence in our age group of parents that are saying, you know what, we need to get our kids back to the basics. And for me, I ain't moved all the way back, but I moved on the outskirts. I'm close enough. I won't move all the way to the bird line. I'm just on the edge. But I think that we look at actual community development. It is so important to know the tone and tenor of that community and to be hands-on. And so I think for Perkins, he literally did that. I mean, he moved from California back to Mississippi to Mendenhall and was actively there. But I think that as activists and social justice workers, we have to find a way to put our finger on the pulse and not just drive in and drop off a box of food or some clothes and then go back to our suburban life.
That's good.
I sense the common thread in all three presentations around a sense of African cosmology and spirituality. And I'm just wondering if you all see that and how that may manifest in your work. I mean, for instance, a conversation about community is at the heart of what it means to be an African. Africans don't live individually, they live in community and see each other that way. So I'm just interested in maybe respond to that.
Well, for me, I am walking and talking what I consider the Watson effect. I mean, I didn't pass them out, and I'm really sorry about that, but I'll pass them down for whoever wants them. I believe that these principles work beyond the nursing field, you know. Number one, the first one is to be true to yourself, you know. Go in the community and use scientific ways, you know, to get things done, whatever that is, because you're going to meet the communities where they are. And yes, I'm a very spiritual person, and I'm very intuitive, you know, so I live, you know, I'm walking and talking the Watson effect for me. And it is interesting that the three of us really are so connected. You know, we could go on the road and, you know, do something together. So yes.
I think this interconnectivity of humans is so important. I think that it's in community that we're able to recognize the intrinsic value of each individual. That when I live in community with you, I don't other you. I don't treat you as other. I treat you as another. And so it's many times for me personally, when I've gotten to know somebody of a different race, of a different culture, that I really begin to know them, you know, and be able to treat them with dignity and respect, and recognize that they're not somebody I need to be afraid of, or they're not somebody that I need to shun or push away because of that they worship different, that they have sex with, you know, somebody different or whatever. And so it's only in community to me that you can really move from having a theory of love and acceptance or embracing to have an actual practice.
Okay, Toni Morrison is a contester, even of a traditional Christian framework. Of course, I'm going to have to qualify that in the dissertation stage, but I would say that she probably would go so far as to say that humanity is not the typical Christian concept. Humanity is in need of salvation, but I think being a reader and now studier and burgeoning scholar of Morrison's work, her speaks to more than what we are in need of is self-realization. But that does not happen individually. There are some pieces that we need to, you know, I can't be good in community unless I tend to a personal hope. She would say that. But if there is any notion of salvation, you know, speaking as a version of Morrison scholar, it will come in community. That would be a key piece of how she is contesting Christianity. Now, she doesn't seek to invalidate it. I believe that she seeks to contest the notion and the way we're careful not to take that was handed to us without transforming it.
And again, I just think that the idea of American rugged individualism, which King speaks against prolifically, that you know it stands in direct antithesis to community. And that has been, I believe, the bane of one of the issues with, in particularly the black community, is that we have succumbed to, America in general has succumbed to this American rugged individualism. When King says, even if you think nobody helps you, you had a mom that gave birth to you. So I mean, she helped you. If nobody else helped you, she did give birth to you. So all of us have received help from somebody at some point, and that can't pull ourselves up out of bootstraps. That's in particular for people in poverty. It's a crime to tell a man to pull himself up by his own bootstraps when he doesn't have any boots on his feet.
Thank you for that question. That was great.
Thank you, this was great.
These
I can give it.
The PowerPoint I'm going to submit it. Maybe we'll get it on the King side. I will submit the PowerPoint that I presented.
Yeah, I would suggest that you email any of the participants that you would like to get their papers. I think they would probably be glad to present it to you. I have one specific question about Dr. King and Koinonia Farm.
I can't hear you, sir.
I have a specific question about Dr. King and Koinonia Farm in southern Georgia. Do you know, I mean, he certainly visited the farm more than once, but do you know, have you heard anywhere, because I haven't in my research, of specific instances where he visited the farm at certain points? Because there's one point in what I consider in a biblical analogy, his Garden of Gethsemane moment with his disciples 4 days before he died, when he gets so fed up with them and he tells them, basically, you can go to hell. He tells Jesse Jackson to get the hell out and go your own way. He says something to the effect of, I'm just going to go back to the farm. And I've just always wondered, I've assumed that meant going back to the farm. But do you have come across any, or has anybody come across any evidence of him going to the farm in southern Georgia at any point?
No, I know that there was correspondence. Again, he did invite Clarence Jordan to come do, I think, 5 days preaching at Dexter, like 5 days. But I have not read anything where that he went. Now, some of the members, his members went to the farm and brought money and support. And they, as well, they supported SCLC as well. But supported the MIA as well. But I have not read where he came.
Any other questions, or we can wind up a little early for once. If there are no more questions or more comments, but this has been very dynamic and lively, and we want to thank our presenters so much.
Can I be your group teacher?
Yeah, I
Hi, how are